Hi, in this video I am going to show you how to put together my Valentine lunchbox SVG file from Simply Crafty SVGs. So this is what a finished lunchbox looks like. It just opens up. There's enough pressure to keep it closed. I will have something to cover those holes. You'll see. And there's an alternate solid panel that's in an extra folder. So you can make this anything you want. You don't need to use the hearts. So this is just a lunchbox you can use for anything. So here are the pieces for the actual lunchbox, for the lid and the box itself. So we're going to put those aside. So that's for the bottom. And then you'll notice that there's different size rectangles, and the smaller ones are for the box portion and the larger ones are for the lid. So now we're going to piece together a few things before we continue. So these are the panels. So the only things we want out right now are that heart panel there, the one with the cutout hearts in white, and that red piece that will go behind the hearts. So we'll put this together so that goes like that. So we're going to just glue that on the back, and I'm just going to make sure, since I'm using textured paper, that I have the texture side up. Really, I mean, as you're seeing, the textured side is really down, but we want it to be showing through those hearts. So I kind of put it down the piece of paper to know where I had to add glue, and then just add a little glue around the hearts, just making sure you're not getting the glue too close to the openings. Otherwise, you could get it to leak into the opening cutouts. And if you do have a little glue that goes beyond, that's okay, because it'll glue on top of the box eventually. You can just wipe it off. Then once we have that on, we're just going to add this, and this will just line up around the edge of the white panel. So we'll just match it right around and fit it to it, and it'll go right over those cutout hearts. So as long as you line up the edges, you'll be fine. So I usually start on one side and then kind of loosely place it, and then move it around a little bit until I have it in the place I need it to be. And I used a digital paper, so I have actually a cardstock that I printed with that pattern that you have. I'm trying to move to digital paper just because it saves space and I have more options. Now with all these new machines, you can make your patterns bigger, smaller, and all that fun stuff, and Cricut and Silhouette and what other machines that are capable. So we're going to put that to the side, and here in my little embellishment bowls, I use these all the time. This is one of my freebies. I put my little small pieces in so I don't lose them. So we're pulling out the latch and the handle pieces. So these are all with silver cardstock that I did. So we have these little brads we're going to put back in for later. So we're just putting these together to get them ready. We're not going to actually put them on the box yet, but we just want to make sure they're ready so when we get to that point we can do it. So you see I'm kind of separating them into the latch versus the actual handle pieces. And I did actually just add that little handle, you'll see it. So this is the bottom. So the bottom piece of the latch is larger than the top. And so there's a small piece with a round on the top that goes on the top latch piece, and the bottom has rounded corners on the bottom. That little rectangular piece. The flat corners go on the top, and rounded corners go on the bottom. So I'm putting a little foam tape there to pop it up. And there's some cut lines there to guide you to where you should place it. So if you don't use foam tape, you can just place it right on there with those little guide cut lines. And those little holes are for brads that we'll use. Those mini brads, which are about 5mm in size. I'm sure most people have them in their arsenal, and if you don't, they're a nice handy little addition, especially for 3D crafting and cards. any kind of paper crafting really. So just make sure the rounded part's on the top, and then it'll be ready for us when we need to put it onto the lunchbox. So I'm going to put it back. I was adding some of my trash in there, which is okay. I kind of use that as a mini trash can too for my little pieces, like my foam tape pieces. So here we have this little piece here, and you see I folded it on the score lines. And the way it goes is, I'm going to show you here. Kind of slide that on. We just fold it. This folds over like that, and we're just going to glue that little tab right there, and then the that little other piece. I'm trying to think of what I would call it. It'd be like almost like a U-ring, but it's not a U-ring, an O-ring. Anyways, that little ring will go around like that. You're not going to glue it or anything. You want to make sure it just hangs in there, and you just want it to be loose. So we're just going to glue that little tab. And then we're just kind of curling this handle a little bit after we glue it to maintain kind of a curve. So you can see it kind of moves around, kind of like you see on some of the lunch boxes. Couldn't make it exactly, but I could get some elements of it. So we'll do the other side as well. And I'm just going to put glue on this little tab, and then fold it over so it has a little room in there to move around. So as it moves up and down, it kind of can insert a little bit into that area. So, and then once you have them all glued together, you can go ahead and continue to curve it a little bit more. So now these are the ends. What would be like the sides to hold it on, like the buckle sides. It's going to just wrap around like that, so you can see. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little glue at the end of this. So just a little glue right at the end, and make sure that doesn't get underneath there. And then just apply pressure to that. So that's some kind of thick bezel metallic cardstock, and you can see I'm just kind of bending it there a little bit, but not a whole lot. You don't have to do that either. And so we'll do the other side the same way. Just add a little glue at the edge again. Just make sure that little we'll call it a rectangle ring doesn't get caught underneath that glue. And then kind of just bent it slightly to get it ready. You don't want to bend it a lot. This is really thick cardstock, so it's kind of hard. I have to do it gently without having the metallics crack. And then those other two pieces will go on top to create a little bit more dimension, but we don't need it right now. So now we'll go ahead and put together the lunch box itself. So those are the two bottom pieces. So when you're looking at these rectangles, there's going to be two that are larger than the others. So there's going to be two shorter ones and two larger ones. So the larger ones go with the lid, so I'm putting that aside, and the smaller ones go with the bottom part of the lunchbox. So what you'll notice is there's cut lines, and the cut lines are purely for guides, and it's really not an eyesore. I'm only going to shade them a little bit so you can see them in this, but I would not do this on your box because I'm just putting chalk on it. I can erase it if I wanted to, but I wanted to show you to illustrate it. But this is going to show on the inside of your box, so you really don't want to do that. But these little lines, these cut lines, will help you line it up when you are gluing this to the bottom of this lunchbox. So let's see, because of the curves around the corners, it's imperative you know how to line it up, especially the very first part of it. So we're going ahead and folding everything on the score lines, and you can see I'm kind of trying to curl this with that. Now I'm going to find out my finger actually works better But you can try whatever you want, but I'm just trying to curve those corners a little bit to help get them curved before we try to put it together. So I'm just using my finger. I do know that my sister showed me something that she says she just uses the edge of a table for instead of her hand to do this kind of activity. It does work. I mean, I've tried it. So whatever works for you, either be a small round tool, something like that, or your hand. I tend to go for my hand the majority of the time, but it's whatever you feel comfortable doing. So once we get it curved, or folded and curved, we'll go ahead and start putting it together. So we'll go ahead and add some glue to the side tab. And then we'll go ahead and line up the other edge to the tab fold, or right up to the tab fold, and make sure it's aligned on the top. It's kind of hard to see with white paper because you can't really see the folds very well. White and black. Of course, unfortunately, I use white and black here and there. So we'll go ahead and glue the other tab. So this one we can't really lay flat because of the curved corners. So we'll go ahead and just line it up that way. And then just apply pressure to secure it. So there's a couple ways we can put the panel in. So we're going to have two panels. The panel that goes on the inside. We could just do it all at once, but I'm going to do that for the second one for the lid. But this is where these cut lines come in. So again, you don't want to really color them like I did. I'm going to line them up, and what they're doing is they're lining up to the edge of that large. Each for the sides, it lines up. One cut line corresponds to the left and right of this large tab. So we're just for this one, going to add glue to this one tab, and we're going to try to just make sure it's lined up. And normally you wouldn't really have to do this. I mean, if you really can do it without it, you could always flip it over. I mean, you don't have to do it with the cut lines. But you just don't want that to be on the outside. So I'm just getting it anchored. So at this point, if you're used to doing these kind of boxes, you could just go ahead and just glue them all on the bottom. I mean, that's up to you. But for somebody who's a little bit newer, I'm just going a little slow. So now, I mean, there's methods. You can just glue all the rest of the tabs to the bottom, or you could go, what I'm going to do is do the opposite tab and then glue the rest of them one by one. So you can go ahead and watch this. I don't think you need a whole lot of commentary with this other than just being really careful. It's just the goal is to make it fit into those corners, because it truly isn't a curved corner. That's why we curved it. But you want to get it as aligned with the tabs using those cut lines on the sides and all the sides. And once you have those lined up, the other things you just might have to kind of get them in place there and fold over those tabs on the bottom to make it wrap around that bottom panel. So I hope I'm explaining that well. So you can go ahead and watch the rest of this, and I'll be back shortly. So now we have pretty much glued all those tabs to the bottom, and you can see we kind of went around the edges, and you kind of get your fingers in to make sure it kind of curls around, and you can see it curves. Then we'll go ahead and add that bottom panel. So with this one, you just want to get the glue around the edges. Get as close to the edges as you can. If it leaks a little bit, try not to. You just do a light, and then we'll put glue on the bottom to attach that panel. So I'm just going to hide all those tabs. But you want to get it as close as possible to the back, so it's not that noticeable that it's a bottom panel. Obviously you can notice it, but to make it less noticeable, I should say. So I just line it up, make sure it's in the right place by kind of going around the edges. And then once I think it's in the right place, I go ahead and apply a little pressure, and then I can just reach in and apply pressure from within. Much easier. Just make sure you get around the edges so you can get it adhere to the edges, as close to the edges as possible. It kind of the tabs kind of push it up a little bit. That's why. We'll just check it, make sure it looks good. And once it looks like it's on okay, we'll move on over to the lid portion. So this one's going to go faster. I'm just going faster in this video because it's pretty much the same. The only difference is that tab, but it's the same process as the box part as far as the initial build of it. I mean, once we attach it, it'll be different. But we go ahead and we're folding all the tabs, and then curling or curving or whatever, curling the paper in the corners. And then we'll go ahead and attach the two pieces just like we did the bottom. And then we will add the bottom panel, or the top panel I should say, it's not the bottom. But the only difference here is I'm going to do it all at once. I will anchor one side just like I did on the box, and then I'll just go around the edge and just glue the tabs onto the bottom. So you can see that method as well. So I'll be back shortly, and you can go ahead and watch it. So now that we have the lid put together, the only difference is this little tab here. As you'll see, this is what we're using that. So that's how we'll attach the lid. And we have a little piece, not on that side, but we'll have a piece to cover those holes. So I'm just making sure it's good and secure before we go ahead and add that top panel. So there's a solid white panel and then this, the heart panel. So first we're going to center this heart panel to that white panel, and then we'll add it to the top of the lid. So as I mentioned earlier, there is in the file you can find a solid version of this piece right here. Not the hearts, it comes without the white or the red piece that you see, but just a solid piece if you want to get a different look, because I think it would be fun to make, because obviously I can't do licensed characters, but some others might personally do, like Disney, like a Disney, or a character, I should say, let's not say Disney. Some sort of character lunchbox would be fun for kids for like a birthday party or something. I just think it would be fun, like a Toy Story one. Anyways, I'm a fan of Toy Story. So after we get all the glue on this, we're going to add the heart panel, but it's important how you put it on. So if you pay attention, the top of the heart, if you rotate this, should be towards the one with those two little dots. So the two holes should be at the top of the panel. And then the tab that hangs down on the back that attaches to the bottom of the box should be the bottom. That's where the bottom of the panel should be. So make sure you put it on right. Otherwise you'll have an upside down heart or image, whichever image you use. So the bottom is considered, I try to do it like a regular lunchbox when it's closed and sitting on its upright. So again, the two little holes at the top. So we're just applying pressure like we did the bottom, just to get that good and adhered. And now it'll be able to go over there, but we're not going to do it quite yet. So we're going to add this little piece, which is not really functional. We're going to add a little glue on the back of this latch. So the smaller latch is for the top, and it'll match right up. It lines right up. So this is a smaller piece. Add a little glue around the holes, and then we're going to line it up with the holes so we can put the brads in there. So I'm just making sure it's lined up, because if you line it up here, everything will line up once we put the two pieces together. Then we'll insert the little mini brads and then open them up on the other side. Of course, I'll probably just drop them. I have a ton of brads. I love brads. I used to use them a lot on my cards and scrapbooking. I don't do as much scrapbooking anymore. I kind of miss it. This is what happens when you're doing videos, because you start talking to yourself, because there's nobody else to talk to. I'm talking to everybody out there, but just talking to myself. Anyways, we're going to open them up on the other side, get them in, and then I have a little piece that will cover that. So that's a little piece that cuts out, and we'll just glue it on the inside to hide the brads. What's nice about this particular box, I was worried at first because I was trying to think of a way to latch it or to close it, but it turns out the size I made it and the way that I had to put it together, it creates enough friction to stay closed, which is perfect, because to me it's almost like a regular lunchbox. Anyways, I was thrilled when it came together that way, and that's why I put these dummy latch pieces on, just to make it look like one. Of course, my own style, because I'm sure there's nothing that really exists out there that looks like that. Who knows? Put it this way, I didn't model really after anything. I just kind of looked at some things as a reference and went from there. So now we're going to add these panels. So we need to put these panels on before we attach the lid. So I'm just curling these with my hands, and it just to curve them a little bit. I know I'm off the camera a little bit, but because they need to be wrapped around the box. So you see these ones, I'm going to show you, get in the right angle. It's going to, the holes match up, and you want it aligned to the top of the opening. So when we're going to add glue around just a section here, I'm going to go around the holes. The holes are only there to guide you. I could have made them squares, but I made them circles. So it's just to line things up for us. We're going to start, when you line this panel up, you can line them exactly with those holes, and then make sure it's aligned to the top. So you see I'm kind of putting on on the side so I can feel with my fingertips that it's aligning with the top. And then from where I started, I'm just applying pressure as I go. So we're going to do the same process as we go around here. I'm just going to add glue. So you see, I know I went off camera there a little bit. Now there's going to be a slight difference between folding cardstock because of the thickness versus paper. So it'll mostly go to the very edge. So the biggest thing is to make sure that you do it gradually and make sure that it's getting adhered as you're going around this edge. Because believe it or not, you know, you have to, it's not exactly the same length as the actual box, because as you put together a box and you attach things and fold them, you have to have a longer panel. So I had to play around with the length of this panel, and paper does bend way easier than doing like a cardstock. So I'm using a cardstock here. It's just a printed one, printed pattern paper that I did on not really heavy cardstock, but it was not American Crafts. I like to use a cardstock for that's a little bit more pliable if I'm using it like paper or like for panels. It just depends. And the reason we are aligning it to the top as we go around is so we have that little white area on the bottom that emulates the same color as the top, because sometimes, you know, they're two-sided. Some of the lunch boxes look two-sided. So right here we have a couple little cut lines, and you see on the left and right, and then those circles that are cut out in the middle. So we're going to align that little opening, that little rectangular there, with the left of the cut line, and they also should be centered around those circles. So there's an offset. They don't match up to the circles, but it should be centered around those circles, and then that other rectangle, the right part of it will be aligned with the other cut line. So, and that's where we're going to place the handle. It's a guide to where we'll place the handles. So again, we want to start lining it up. So start from the left side there, make sure everything is lined up. And it should automatically line up if you start at that left edge. But if not, your other guides visually are the circles and the cut lines and those little rectangles. And we're going to go ahead and keep on adding some glue to gradually wrap it around. So again, just use your left hand or as a guide to make sure that it's aligned with the top. I'm just making sure there's no glue. There was some glue on my fingers. And some thinner paper might go all the way to the edge there. most paper should go to the edge, but that little gap, I mean, I actually intended it to be that way. I had already adjusted it. But you could always make it longer if you wanted to, too. So now that we have that on, we're going to add the bottom part of the latch and the handle. We could add the lid first, but the lid, when it closes, it might interfere with you putting these on, so we put those on first. So we have that together, so you see that little cut line there. So I'm just going to go a little bit to the left, so the tip of it's going to go a little bit over that open area. And the same thing on the other side. And then the side of it will align with the end of the panel. And then this will line up with the holes. And then when we put that lid on, it'll line up to that other latch piece. So we'll, like we did the lid latch piece, we're just going to add a little glue and carefully place it so it's aligned over those cutout holes are aligned to the cutout holes in the box. Then we'll add those brads. And I'm applying pressure at the same time. And then opening them up on the other side. And we'll have a panel to cover that section, as well as the section with the holes across from it. So I'm just going to add glue to just the rectangle portion. It really doesn't matter, but you don't want to get glue on the ring part. So you can see the placement. And again, you want to make sure that if I'm looking at the end of it, I want it to go beyond that opening, just beyond that cut line. And when we glue it on top of the opening, you can't see it anymore. But it just helps you visually know where to put it. And then it's equidistant from both sides. So after this, the only thing that needs to be added are those little dimensional pieces that I'm going to pop up with foam tape. But I'll do that after I get the lid on. So we'll just get that in place. And then there are two pieces that go on the inside to hide the brads. And also the holes on the inside. So those pieces, we're not going to put those on right this moment. But for this now, I'm just folding it down a little bit, and we're just going to line it up to those holes. So again, those holes are purely only for helping you fold it over. I don't want to put brads or anything in there just to make it bulky. You really will only see the holes once we cover up the inside when you open it. But if you wanted to put something on them, I mean, obviously you could put little enamel dots or something like that, or a piece of solid cardstock. I didn't really think it was a huge issue to the design, but you know, everybody's different. So you see I just lined it up. So you don't want to be using a really thin cardstock for this project. I do use American Crafts textured cardstock. You know, some cardstock may just crack as you're folding it a little bit if you're going to open and close it, but that would be my recommendation usually. For most of my crafts are done, I think with 95% of the time I use American Crafts textured cardstock. I have been using I say it wrong. I don't know if it's basil or basil. I'll have to look it up. But I do use that occasionally as well. It's good quality. It's a little thicker than I like sometimes. It doesn't bend as well. for me. Their texture's a little bit good. So there you go. That covers those holes. So it gives it a little style inside too. And then we'll cover those brads. The other little thing is sometimes you don't want to get rid of like the extra, that was fortunate, the extra little pieces that cut out. Like there's a big heart that cut out on the front, and the heart was usable. So I'm just going to place the heart inside the lunchbox, so when it opens, you'll see that little heart. So it was something that cut out and we were going to throw away anyway, so why not add it to the design? So you can see it will close. I mean, I'm just kind of getting it tight. I like the fact that it's tight because it feels kind of like a lunchbox. And you can see what it looks like closed. So we're still going to add that little heart. And yeah, it creates its own, what is that? Yeah, see here's a heart from the front. So it cut out, so we might as well just put it in there. That's what I was trying to tell you earlier. It creates friction. It's got enough friction to keep it closed by itself. So this is a cute paper anyway, saying I love you, or then we can close it carefully. And then we'll add these two little pieces. So we're just going to cut a couple pieces of scotch foam tape. I like it because I can tear the foam tape. I can cut it different sizes, and it's easy to get the backing off. I was using some other stuff from like a dollar store, and I was just getting too frustrated with it, so I went with a higher quality. Sometimes not paying more is better than going with the cheaper stuff. So I just created dimension by popping them up. So that's really just an extra thing that I wanted to do. But that's it. That's the finished lunchbox. I look forward to seeing what other people do with it and creating other creations as far as characters, or I just think it would be a fun thing for kids to give for little gifts. I enjoyed this. This was one of my recent fun projects. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you did, I would like a little thumbs up down below. And it's always helpful if somebody likes my video, and or subscribe if you haven't done so already. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I thank you so much for watching.